Good morning. It's time for another high pointing excursion. It is approximately 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on August the 10th. And as the sign shows, I'm about to start the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail to Mount Washington. This is going to be approximately a 4-mile hike with an elevation gain from where I am right now at the base station on the west side of the mountain where the Mount Washington Cog Railway is, and headed up to 6,288 feet above sea level, the high point of the state of New Hampshire. The elevation gain is going to be around 3,700 feet, something along those lines. So as you see, here's the trail. And here we go. Very exciting. This is going to be state high point number 10. Recently did Rhode Island, and we'll be adding to Texas, Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and then New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I'm sorry, I said state high point number 10. Correction, this will be state high point number 9. State high point number 9. But it's going to be probably the second or third most difficult. Obviously, Guadalupe Peak in Texas is a rugged hike, and Mount Elbert in Colorado. So those are the two toughest. So this is going to be quite the adventure today. Again, there's the beginning of the trail from where I am at the Cog Railway, and off we go to the high point of New Hampshire, Mount Washington in Sergeant's Purchase, New Hampshire at 6,288 feet above sea level. More coming later. Hello there. About 40 minutes into the hike, here's a little stretch of the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail that's not as difficult, so I can do a little recording for you. Really excited about this trek up Mount Washington. I think a lot of you know what a meteorology nerd, if you will, that I am. And Mount Washington certainly is known for its bad weather, but today it appears is not going to be one of those days. The high temperature is forecast to be in the low 60s today at the summit. It's forecast to be almost 70 tomorrow. The all-time high at the summit is 72. It's not going to quite get there, but I hear it's going to get pretty close to the record, which I believe is 69 for August the 11th. There's only an average of 16 days per year that the summit reaches over 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Today is going to be one of those days, and tomorrow even warmer. What Mount Washington, of course, is known for is that in 1934, the highest wind gust ever at the time occurred, 231 miles per hour. And that's still, even though it's been broken by a tropical cyclone in Australia in the 90s, with a wind gust even higher than that, it's still the highest recorded wind gust in a non-tropical cyclone situation. So I'm going to keep on walking, and I'll be back with more about how the trail is going, the hike is going, and looks like we might have a little water crossing here, but I'll be back with more about weather fun facts. So stay tuned. Here's a nice little waterfall. Not sure what the name of it is, but very pretty, and just part of the scenery here on the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail on the way to the summit of Mount Washington, the high point of New Hampshire. This is interesting. A little ladder to get up that face of rocks. The boulder scrambling has intensified here in the last little bit on the trail. I don't have an exact distance, but I can tell you, hold on, get the watch, 1,350 feet of elevation gained. Not even halfway there yet, because this is, remember, over 3,600 feet today. But here we are with a little update on the trail up Mount Washington. That was a really difficult section that I just came up. The bouldering and scrambling was tricky. I hope that's going to ease off for a little while. The blue blazes are what you follow, and so off I go. Stopping to take a break for a minute and enjoy a nice view. The technical climbing up the rocks is a lot harder than I realized. I mean, like this section that I'm about to go up, this is pretty tame compared to some things that I've been going up so far. I mean, you saw the ladder earlier, and there have been other sections when one of those ladders would have come in handy. Oh, a breeze. That feels nice. It is very humid today. As I mentioned earlier, with my weather factoids, it's much warmer than typical here. I haven't given you any more weather facts since, because this has been taking a little bit more out of me than I expected. But don't worry, I'll have some later. But continuing on, 1,600 feet of elevation gained of the 3,600 feet climb up Mount Washington to 6,288 feet above sea level, the highest points in New England, by the way. Okay, video time of the looking up at the summit. This is the first time I feel like I've broken free of the trees to get a good look at the summit. So that's where I'm headed, the summit of Mount Washington. The elevation is about 1,900 feet away from 6288. Right up there is the summit of Mount Washington. This is the hut at Lake of the Clouds. Zoom, there we go. So this is what we've got here. This is the end of the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail, and that sign right over there says it's the Crawford Path, which is actually part of the Appalachian Trail. That's Mount Monroe over there, by the way. This is a link up for the Appalachian Trail, which goes from Georgia all the way to Maine, over 2,200 miles, and that's the direction of the trail. So over 2,200 feet of elevation gained. Certainly we're through the tree line now and on the way to the summit. This is obviously Lake of the Clouds, for which that hut back there is named. And that's the trail up to the summit. A bit of a disconcerting sign about the bad weather. You know, I mentioned earlier how bad the weather is here at Mount Washington. Three things are at play. Number one is just the topography. If you were to look at a topographical map and look at the mountains that angle off to the southwest and to the northwest of Mount Washington, number one, when you have a westerly wind, that creates a funnel effect. Number two, of course, is the summit up there is the highest point in New England. It's higher than anything within thousands of miles of here, or hundreds of miles of here, I guess I should say. So therefore, wind, of course, when it encounters land, trees, and other such environmental obstacles, that creates drag and friction and slows down the wind, but there's nothing to slow it down there. So you have the topography of the mountains that create a funnel effect. You've got the lack of high terrain around here, so the wind is just completely unencumbered. There's no drag, there's no friction to slow it down. And in the wintertime, the prevailing atmospheric patterns bring a lot of storms over New England. Just the jet stream brings pretty much all of the storms that go over the United States over this part of New England. So then you get really bad weather here. Air temperatures below minus 40 Fahrenheit occur. Wind chills have occurred recently as low as 109 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. So very, very bad weather can happen here. Walking along here on the way to the summit, an area that is actually a part that I can film while walking along. Haven't been very many areas like that on this trail. Out of the tree line, as you can tell, I've been for a few hundred feet, and heading on up Crawford Path to the top of Mount Washington after starting up the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail. It's cooled down. It was super humid earlier in the lower parts of the trail and in the forested sections, but now above the tree line, to my point earlier, there's no environmental obstacles to slow down the wind. So the temperature's dropped a little bit, and the humidity has consequently dropped as well, and it's much more comfortable. Matter of fact, there's almost a briskness, I would say, about it. But headed on up towards the summit of Mount Washington, my 9th state high point. There it is. You may recall earlier on the trail that the blue blazes were to help guide you. Now that we're no longer on the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail and on the Crawford Path, these rock cairns are your guidance through this area where obviously, whoa, the trail isn't marked too terribly well or hard to distinguish. It's just a lot of rock that you're going over, but those obviously help. Continuing on towards the summit, I stopped for some hydration and a snack, and I wouldn't say this is the home stretch, but getting close. Here's a 360 panoramic view. Perhaps the final video, but a little note that when you get a little bit over 5,800 feet of elevation, you kind of lose sight. That's not the summit. You lose sight of the towers and where the summit is. So just be aware of that. But here we go. Less than 500 feet, about 460 feet of elevation, or thereabouts, to the summit. Thank goodness for the rock cairns. They really help with the directions. You see them there. Most of them have bleached white rocks on the top too, to help you. One last video to give you an idea of what it looks like. This is now over 6,000. This is less than 250 feet from the top. There's the last ridge. There's more of the rock towers that are part of the trail. Here's one last view of everything before we get to the summit. "250 feet of elevation gain away, over 6,000 feet. Well, everyone, here's a view from the summit of Mount Washington. Right over there is a long line of people. Get a little closer to that so you can see it. There's the summit sign. Let me zoom in on that so you can see. That's the summit sign right there. And then there's the long line of people waiting to get their picture taken with it. People come up on a cog railway, on an auto road, and there's multiple different hiking ways to get up here. So I can say that was one really, really difficult hike. I've got a summit picture and spent quite a bit of time up here. The Weather Observatory Museum, of course, is fascinating. There's the railway right there that you can take down, which I'm actually going to do. So that will make it a little bit easier to get about my day. But the Weather Observatory Museum is a must-see because there's all sorts of information about the 231 mile per hour wind gust recorded in 1934 and other things related to the extreme weather here at Mount Washington. As a matter of fact, that's the observatory right there. I went to their museum, which is really cool as well. More video from the top of Mount Washington. There are people, you can't tell how long the line is there, but that's the summit sign. Thought it was really interesting that this little sign right over here says that the Crawford Path is the oldest hiking trail, mountain hiking trail in America, dating back to 1819, so over 200 years old. Very, very interesting. One more look at the summit. There it is. People lining up for their photo. Because again, people drive up here, they take the train up here, the cog railway, they hike up here. So there's a lot of ways to get here. And there's a really big visitor center with a cafeteria and the Weather Museum. There it is, the Sherman Adams Visitor Center.